I've been attending since morning and have absolutely loving it. All the panels, all the discussions have been very insightful, and I'm very happy to be here. So I'm Yasser Awan, and I'm mostly known for my beard. Um, and I intended to dress up as Gandalf for this conference, but then I was told it's not Comic Con. So there you go. But apart from that, I work as director of labs at Mindstorm Studios, and I've been an entrepreneur all my life, working in different industries from media, publishing, hardware, to development sector, and eventually in gaming. And I also lead the biggest learning initiative in Pakistan around building games. So that's me. So today's panel is about nurturing talent in gaming industry, and Pakistani game development ecosystem has been trying to slowly build momentum for the past 1.5 decades, and we are picking up some space now. And more people are interested in building games, joining it as a profession, and trying it out. And this brings in a lot of opportunity, but also some challenges that needs to be solved. And there's a lot for us to learn, because the industry, with new people industry, has now a lot of fresh perspective, and more people are coming in, but they need guidance. We need guidance in terms of how to go about having that conversation and having that evolution, essentially. So for that, we have an awesome panel, and I'll quickly try to introduce everybody on the panel, and then we'll go about asking them a lot of questions. Just first thing first, if you have any questions during this panel, we'll probably, I think, given the format, we're not going to do a Q&A at the end. So ask away all the questions, use the Q&A option, and I'll pick up those questions during the discussion and ask away. So we have Mahum Khan with us, who is working as a software test engineer in the console team for Unity Technologies, and basically she recently moved to UK to join the Unity team, and before that she was working in Pakistan as a lead QA engineer for Arthitech for their VR-based communication app. And this specializes in game development, pipelines, 3D games, and virtual reality technology, with an addition of gaming consoles. She is also an ambassador for women in games, and she's right now for PWIC. She's also now she was the head of Lahore chapter, and now she is the global chapter success lead for the organization. We have Marcus Foon with us. Marcus, please bear with me if I mispronounce your name, and please correct me. He's the global program manager at Indie Games Accelerator and community at Google, and he's been an entrepreneur for 16 years, and he is engaged with a lot of game devs and startups and corporates and communities across the globe as well. And he's helped create a lot of opportunities for these communities and game developers and entrepreneurs who have raised over $65 million US, and over 100 startups. And the communities that he has helped spawn or work with have over 200 plus community managers and 200,000 network members. So we're talking large scale learning here. And so we have Emma Smith with us. She is head of talent at Creative Assembly, and she oversees talent pipelines and been with the studio for 10 years. And she has seen it grow to over 500 people. And the organization has won multiple BAFTA awards and GI-based awards for best places to work for in 2017 and 18. And she and her teams also leads a lot of education and community and charity initiatives from playground to industry. The legacy project is also something we'd love to talk about, Emma, because that brings in a lot of upskilling when it comes to game development. So that's also something really interesting. So we have a very diverse panel from people who have their own technology journey to people who have been building community and interacting directly with talent. So, and we're talking about nurturing talent. So, and generally when we talk about this, we talk about young talent. So the first question that I would like to go through around the room would be and ask all of you is, how young is young in this case? when to start. So Emma, maybe you go first.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's a real privilege. So thank you for inviting me to speak on this, because I feel very passionate about it. So yeah, with children and games, obviously we do need to be mindful of the whole experience with using screens and digital, but I don't think it's ever too young really to introduce technology to children. And for children to feel comfortable and confident with using technology as a part of how they learn other things. So using it as a tool to learn to read, as a tool to learn mathematics and communication, even learning to write stories and make music, so that it's something that children are not afraid to use. Something that we've recognised through the work and the pilot projects we've done with children in schools is the fear of failure can be quite high in children, and we try to encourage children that it's okay to try something and it not work, and to try again, like we do when we make games, when we iterate and we find bugs, and we just communicate and work through that. So they say a young age is normally around 3 or 4 is where we start seeing children picking up technology and having fun with it, and using it as a tool to learn. And as they get a little bit older, just nurturing that curiosity and that confidence is important, as we do that, the tech and the personal confidence together in as one.
So Marcus, what do you think?
First of all, thanks for having me here. Really, pleasure to be here with everybody else. I don't have the opportunity to work with talents as young as what Emma has just mentioned, but I do agree. I think if we were to talk about nurturing talents from young, and take myself as an example, for instance, exposure to games does happen at really young age. Back in those days, when we have Famicom, computer games with B drive, floppy disks, and all that kind of stuff, it kind of triggers, I think, mainly curiosity towards solving puzzles, solving games, and taking on challenges and wanting to create something new, throughout the process. So as long as we can provide a safe learning environment while exploring games and learn things through that, I think it can be as young as, I don't know, primary school or even younger than that. So yeah.
All right. Yes, Mahum, please go ahead.
First of all, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for the invitation, Epiphany. About the, like Marcus said, I'm not very used to working with really young people, but in my personal experience, I'd say that, yeah, basically engineering, my experiences with engineering. So engineering is pretty much problem solving. So problem solving can come as early as like when you're a really young toddler. So a very famous problem in our books, in our engineering books, is Tower of Hanoi. And if you notice that you have like really small kid toys that are based on the problem of Tower of Hanoi, and children play with them, and then they get used to them. And the more they get used to problem solving, the more it's a very good brain exercise. It's very good for their nurturing, their brain growth, and all that stuff. So yeah, gaming, if you see it from a different perspective as learning and growth and nurturing, it can come as early as 3, 4, when they're just starting to walk, maybe just start introducing interesting puzzles into their lives, and then build up on all these puzzles. Yeah,
it makes sense. There's a lot of interesting perspective around when to start, and Marcus also talked about safe environments, and we'll kind of like circle back to it. I just want to kind of like set the tone in the room. I want to go through the room and ask some questions. And another question that comes to my mind is, because we're talking about nurturing talent, we've already kind of like hinted upon personality traits and some talents. So what is one key personality trait that you guys would think is absolutely essential when it comes to being in the gaming industry? Marcus, let's start with you.
The ability to solve problems. I think that's That's the key. And that's not just the key for being in gaming industry, I would say. Even, if you're working with someone, or if you're trying to, be an entrepreneur, like become a startup founders and things like that. Oftentimes we find that successful founders or successful people in their jobs are the people who are resourceful, who knows how to solve problems, no matter what the problem is. They know how to find ways to learn, to break through, to really go above and beyond, and then just continue the journey again and again, and they can repeat that no matter what kind of position you put them in. So I would say, if I were to pick one trait, that would be problem solving.
Yes, Emma.
Wow, that is a big question, and I get often asked about that when I'm talking to graduates, and when they're thinking about the kind of things they need to bring to an interview, or how do they present themselves when they speak to developers as they start to come through, and particularly for women as well, underrepresented groups in the UK. But that problem solving is absolutely 100% needed. Something that I talk quite a lot about is resilience as well, and the personal drive to want to keep moving forward with your career, with your aspirations, with your concept, your idea, and being able to really clearly communicate through that as well. So I think resilience is a key aspect. It's a personal attribute that I see time and time again in people that are really successful, and people who go on to do amazing things within our industry.
Absolutely. So, Mahum, what do you think?
Absolutely agree with Marcus and Emma. I think if I have to add another point, it would be curiosity. I've noticed this in among the young people who are really curious about different kind of problems and different kind of format or any kind of thing. They're just super curious about design or engineering. Those people really thrive in game development. Another thing I would like to build upon what Marcus said about problem solving, because I honestly also believe that problem solving is definitely the biggest key in that key aspect, is that when he says that problem solving in every aspect, in any aspect possible, it definitely is any aspect. So I would like to give an example of his statement. For me, my earliest problem solving was figuring out how to pass my exam, because for me, that was just weird. I was not very good with the academics. I was not very good with exams. I was tanking them very badly, and especially the literature part, all of the languages, I was tanking them. And then one day I started breaking them down into smaller blocks and took a goal. I was like, yeah, I need to get 50 marks to pass. Let's just get to that point and we'll figure out the rest. And that's how I built upon that. And I was able to cross 70 with that kind of thought process. So it wasn't really about learning literature or language. It was just solving this problem of not failing an exam. So yeah.
So the essence that I'm getting is there are a lot of skills that we need, but essentially problem solving, and I think it starts from first understanding the problem. So I think what you guys are saying, it's first probably the thing that one should be looking at a personality trait is empathy, the ability to understand the problem and then go ahead and break it down into smaller pieces and solve it. And I also see that there are some personality traits here that we're essentially not learning, but we are unlearning them. Like they're not really that afraid of failure, but adults they are. So maybe that's one thing that you guys are saying in terms of, okay, this is maybe we need to keep on practicing from early age. And so like you guys said, screens and exposure and all those things is one thing, but what I also gather is that a lot of what you guys are talking about doesn't really, it's an overarching kind of thing. Okay, these are the 3-4 things or 2-3 things that one needs to kind of like keep on inculcating in young ones to put them in the right direction, and no matter what path they take. So moving on, Emma, tell us a little bit about Legacy Project and what it does and how it does it.
Sure. So the Legacy Project is my brainchild. I started that in 2014. In the UK, the school curriculum changed and computer science became an option for children to be able to get a qualification in when they left school. And the teachers, I kind of think the kids might know more than me. Is there anybody at your studio that might be able to help me be able to teach this? And the kids are like, yeah, I really want to learn computer science, but I don't know what I can do with it. So when I spoke to the developers in the studio, they were really excited and wanted to go out to schools and speak to the students. And it really flourished and blossomed from there. It's a win-win-win-win-win situation when the students get some extra tuition from someone that inspires them, someone that they recognize within themselves. They thrive in their studies. The teachers and educators learn something themselves, but also they get excited and inspired about how they can use games as a way to teach a variety of different subjects, not just computer science. They can teach art and English in through that, or even talk about team building and using esports as an opportunity to encourage communication as well. So it's really gone on and thrived from there. In the studio itself, our employees can sign up to be a CA ambassador. And we provide time out of the schedule for them to go into schools, colleges, universities, to interact with the students and interact with educators and really create that bridge so that people don't see the games industry as something that's impenetrable. You know, I talk about it as, you know, it's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. If anybody's read the story by Roald Dahl, that it's this great building that no one can seem to get in unless they've got this magical ticket. But actually, it's a really big professional environment. It's globally very successful. There are many different skills that people can bring to our industry. And if we can share that positively and have great role models, and Mum, I'm so pleased that you're a Women in Games ambassador as well, because we support Women in Games wholeheartedly at Creative Assembly. And I lead the women's group there as well. It just keeps breeding this positive momentum for our industry, not just in the United Kingdom, but globally, that we can break down those misconceptions people have, that children have, that their parents have, that the teachers have, that they think that this isn't somewhere they can be, then it absolutely is somewhere they can arrive, but they can thrive as well. They can be around like-minded people. You know, when I joined games, it's like, oh my God, this is great. I can be around people who like playing games and like watching movies that I like, and Lord of the Rings, gotta be in there. I felt like I was on my own. I felt like a bit of a loner in my younger years, but I felt like I'd met my tribe when I came into games. I could really be myself and bring my whole self to work. And I love to be able to other people to feel that. I love young women to feel like that about coming into games as well. So it's been an amazing journey, and it's not stopping here.
Awesome. So it's very interesting to see the kind of challenges you talked about. They kind of like they feel like they are globally consistent when it comes to how let's say, like you said, parents, how they respond to such situations. And I often say that parents want what's best for you, but then I correct it by saying what they think is best for you. And that means the level of information they have is something that matters. But another key thing that I'm getting from what you said is the challenges when it comes to, let's say, technology in teaching, and those are also, that's also something that's very common with even a country like Pakistan, because technology in terms of educations in early year, be it gaming, be it non-gaming, is light years behind. And like you said, hand-holding and helping people walk certain pathways or assisting them in that is super important. So coming to continuing the same discussion, So Marcus, you work with communities a lot, and these are big communities we're talking about. How can these communities, or the people entering into the market or recently becoming part of this community or part of the gaming industry, learn from or take maximum use of these communities? And feel free to plug in terms of what this community does and what it's about.
Okay. So I just want a quick comment. I used to work with a studio that the studio name is Mum Not Proud, which is kind of funny and sad at the same time. It clearly states that, you know, it's also a cultural thing that, you know, parents disapprove of their kids going to game industry. You know, just a quick comment on that. But yes, communities. I think what a lot of people don't realize is how community can actually help them grow, and, you know, by being a part of the community, not just, you know, lurking around and, you know, try to see and find answers and grow from there, by contributing, you know, giving back to the community, can also help them grow faster than they would themselves. So that is something that we, you know, at Google realize, you know, in terms of the values to communities that we can provide to the people, the developers in general that we work with. So when it comes to community in the game industry, I think there are several types. Of course, you know, we have communities that talks about technology specifically, like, you know, Unity, the Unreal, communities that talk about like updates and, you know, how to use specific features to do specific things. And then we have communities that is focused on local scenes, country specific, language specific, talk about like the challenges within that country itself. So of course, you know, it could possibly be that, you know, all the discussions are, say, in Turkish or in Vietnamese or in Japanese and Korean. That is like really targeted, and also communities that are a little bit more broad, connecting people, you know, allowing people to showcase their games, getting feedback, connecting, you know, mentors, experts, you know, getting advice on some things and whatnot. So of course, you know, these communities, especially in the game industry ones, are not as visible if I were to compare it to, you know, the other types of communities, you know, talking about like mobile app development, for example. The game industry communities, apart from the technology ones, technology-driven ones, are less visible. It's more siloed in some way, you know, focusing on a region or country specifically, instead of like, you know, connecting together. So I think that is maybe one of the reasons why people are not aware that, you know, these communities actually exist, or where can anyone actually find help through these communities. So I have the pleasure of working with the indie game studios across the world through our program, Indie Game Studio Accelerator. And this year, actually right now, it's still happening. It's a 12-week program that we run and then help, you know, students that we select to grow, especially on mobile platform. These people, a lot of them, they actually run communities themselves outside the program. And they represent their country, they represent their region in helping the others to grow. And a lot of the challenges are pretty much the same. And, you know, people might not realize it when they are on the same journey. So when we connect these people together and you have them on the same table and talk about it, then they kind of realize that, oh, you know, it's actually much more valuable to be connected, you know, across the region, across countries, and the values that they can get out of it is actually much more than, you know, doing it by themselves. So one of the things that we try to do is also to have a community program that help, you know, game studios to grow, especially on mobile platform, of course, you know, because we have a mobile distribution platform that will be launching publicly, I think, next year. But right now we're doing some pilots in selected markets, and hopefully, you know, you'll hear about it somewhere, you know, third quarter next year.
Awesome. So we're talking, when we started this community, M Labs in Pakistan, which is now 2,000 people strong, we kind of like, we felt that there are diverse kind of people that need to come in. And you mentioned lurking around, and that shows that in these communities, and especially because it's hard to find about them in a lot of cases because they're not that commonly known. How important is having open doors in terms of how can you make them more welcoming? Because one of the key challenges that I see is, even though this is true to a certain extent for a lot of product audience product-based markets, but gaming being at the cutting edge of product mindset, how do we make these communities more open or welcoming for diverse people, because they need to come in for these communities to thrive? Just to follow up on what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think to establish a community that is inclusive and also supportive at the same time, the policies of particular community has to be clear and transparent, and it has to be respectful. It has to be in some way uphold the values the community believes in. A lot of the communities that we see does not actually have those in place in the first place. So they might have a lot of members, but because there's no clear rules or guidelines or code of conduct per se, people just tend to do whatever they want, right? When they give comments, it's usually harsh. It's usually non-constructive, and people feel hurt. And the more this happens, the less people wants to share. And there's problems with spams and self-promotion about basically overly talking about certain things and so on and so forth. And then there's cyberbullying and those kind of stuff that happens as well. So it's not helping. And I would say the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that the communities actually have those values in place. The organizing team need to really go through themselves and establish that, okay, here are the values that we want to uphold, and here are the guidelines to the communities, and we want to be inclusive. We want to encourage people to share and be empowered in some ways, and do have that and execute it within the community. And I think that's the first kind of step. The second step is also for them to be collaborative. So reach out to communities which is doing similar things, or if not, even like a competitor, if you will. I mean, communities, competitive communities is kind of weird. Like, community is supposed to be together, collaborative. Like, so if there are communities that don't see eye to eye, I think that's a problem to begin with. It's not supposed to be a community. It's supposed to be a close group in that sense. So reach out as much as possible, collaborate, talk about some things, work together. And the more this happens, the better the connection is. And the better the connection is, the more values that the members can get out of it, right? So yeah, just keep on building on those. I think it will help change how things are at the moment.
So transparency and the right form of governance in communities is super important to kind of like have a safe and constructive environment. So Mahum, coming to you, so from building games to working for a company that builds an engine that people use to build games on, what's the difference like? What was the journey? Can walk us through that, and what kind of skill sets you need to kind of like have similar journeys?
Yeah, well, when I used to make games, I was using the same engine, Unity engine, to make the games, to make said games. And the difference from moving from making games to building the engine that makes said games is just as difficult as it sounds. That, yeah, it's worlds apart. It's different languages, it's different programming languages, it's different problem sets, more difficult, much more difficult problem sets. But the journey was very smooth, and thanks, and it was mostly because of my seniors who were around me that helped me through my journey, and they were very passionate to help me through that journey. They were very considerate about my maybe lack of some knowledge spaces, or very, very happy to help me grow. I think the bigger journey was coming from Pakistan to UK, and during COVID. That was a much more bigger one, a much more difficult one, and gearing myself toward getting recognized by such a big company. And I think social media helped a lot in that process, because we're not connected, especially in COVID. We're not connected. We're not in the same space anymore. We're all virtual, and people, even though people are tired and they have this Zoom fatigue, and they're really, really ready to get in, but this get in same room. But this is really a good time to get recognized globally. You know, break down your borders and expand your horizon as much as possible, because now you're just one page away from someone sitting in Australia or New Zealand, and seeing you and recognizing your talents. So yeah, I think that was social media really helped me out in getting there, because I was really active. I was really active with my community that I work with. I was really active with the Women Games chapter that I was, and I was really up to date with my LinkedIn profile. And basically that's where I got the call from. I didn't really apply, so I got headhunted by my recruiters on LinkedIn, saying that, we saw your profile, we saw your products, and they look really nice, and there's a position there. So yeah.
So just to quickly have a follow up on this question. So like in programming, for instance, we say, if you really need to learn to program, maybe you should learn compiler construction. So because if you don't know how a computer interprets your input, you aren't really a great programmer. Maybe you are okay or a good programmer, but you aren't. So I'm guessing some of it applies to your journey as well, in terms of, because that's what the challenge is in terms of learning the engine itself and building games on top of it. And do you think, are there particular things that one needs to do in terms of putting yourself on this path, or what's the most important thing? Like, for instance, is self-learning the right skill, or is there more to it as well?
I think I would like to change the perspective of this question a little bit. So about, I would like to put the perspective of the Pakistani industry here. So working in a, well, it's not a gaming studio, Unity technology, but it is a leading tool maker, it's a leading engine maker. So working in that kind of studio, you need to have this specialized kind of skill set. And they do require you to know all these deep knowledges about your industry and whatever your position is. But working in the Pakistani gaming industry, you necessarily don't have that kind of exposure. You are usually more exposed to hyper-casual games. And those hyper-casual games, the skill set that is required to make those hyper-casual games may not align with AAA studios. And that is one of the biggest hindrances for our youth when they want to go out and work for bigger studios. Obviously, when you growing up, you want to work with Square Enix, you want to work with Sony, you want to work with all these Japanese legacy studios, but you have heard it day and day again that people really find it difficult to pass their technical test with these kind of companies, even though, like I said, you're in this virtual world now where everyone, it's very easy to get recognized by companies out there. Unlike 20 years ago, when someone a recruiter in Japan might not even have heard of Pakistan, or even they might not have heard of your city. So it's now very easy, but people still find it difficult to pass their technical tests. And I believe that it is because of their exposure in our current Pakistani market, because of the dominance of hyper-casual. And there's nothing wrong with the dominance of hyper-casual. It works for our market. We have a very good gaming studios that are thriving over this, but the hindrance of passing your Square Enix technical test would be that you might not have even seen the problem sets that they might want you to work on. So one of the technical interview tests that I can give you an example was that creating another creating a DirectX library from scratch and submitting it for your technical interview. A person who has been working in 3 to 4 years, for 3 to 4 years in the Pakistani gaming industry might not have had that kind of exposure to work on this kind of skill set. It would be very, very difficult for them. But that is what they require from their mid to senior level or junior to mid-level engineers. And same goes for art, same goes for design, same goes for product people. So they do require those specialized skill sets. So for me personally, what I did was I was really keen on learning and increasing my skill set personally. So for me, it was difficult to find mentors in Pakistan who had that kind of skill set. So I went outside. That's why I say social media has such a big impact on my journey, because I use social media to find these mentors outside my country, maybe relevant from my ethnicity, maybe from different ethnicity, different countries, spoke to them, searched out what my career path can be, what kind of skill set I do need. And then one thing, a lot of people say that you should use your personal projects to include or learn these skill set. For me, that didn't really work out that well because I wasn't super motivated and to work on my personal time. I wanted to watch Netflix a lot, but I had long working hours and I was working like 12 hours a day. It was hectic lifestyle. So I said that, yeah, when I go home, I want to go home and I want to spend time with my family. I don't want to work more. So what I did was I used the skill set I wanted to learn to increase my knowledge base and increase my level. I started incorporating them in my own team, and it was very difficult working on to give you an explanation, I have never worked on any hyper-casual product. I have worked on a little more different products, like said VR communication apps or something like that. So, but it was still very difficult because I had a very small team. We had very high, very, very fast development cycles. We need to release really fast. And so, yeah, it was really fast paced, but it required a lot of support from my managers and my seniors, and really for them to understand my vision, what I wanted, and then understanding that this girl suggesting all these new processes is going to help us in the long term, help our production in the long term. So yeah, include introducing all those skill set that would be required from my that are industrial standards internationally, introducing them in our work process in Pakistan, in our small team of 6 people. That seemed like very odd, very weird, very difficult, maybe a time overhead, but we did that, and I was able to learn all of that. And through all of these skill sets, I was able to clear my technical test, because when I entered my technical test in Unity, I didn't really find it that difficult. It was I had gone through all of those problems myself on my own. I had figured out their solutions. I did that on my own. So yeah, self-learning is a good idea, but yeah, implementing them on personal projects, if you're super ace on that, go for it. Otherwise, I would really recommend introducing them in your current team, because if your team is not implementing international standards right now, there are high chances they would really benefit from all of the changes you are bringing to the table.
To sum it up, and I'm sure because you talked about a lot of things, so I might miss a few things, but self-learning, but also working at the right place with right people, and also reaching out actively and talking to people is super important. One should not shy away from that. And Marcus, I would love for you to comment on this aspect, that how diverse this industry is and where do we start. But before that, I want to come to Emma and ask her this question, because you've been looking at talent acquisition in Creative Assembly, and you've been obviously hiring from very diverse backgrounds and locations and all those. And Mahum talked about some aspects of exposure as well. What are the key missing links when, let's say, you are hiring from a country or a place where the ecosystem isn't there yet? What are the key elements that are missing?
And I'd say I think that Mum's response actually just comes us back full circle while we were talking about in the beginning, that curiosity, having the personal resilience and the problem solving to be able to keep pushing forward. And I think, again, being as a Women in Games ambassador, you absolutely demonstrated what we'd like to have for all our women, have the confidence to be able to do that. I do recognize, you know, it's not completely even as a playing field globally. We're all starting at different points in time, and I think it's the hyper casual side of things, you know, the mobile development. I think, you know, without you know, saying negative things about AAA and AA development, I think sometimes we completely dismiss all the other skills that can be brought to the fore in other types of game development as well. So when, as a recruiter myself, but also I implore other recruiters to do the same, is to look beyond the game the person has made, but actually the skills that they have, and to try and work as mentors, put yourself out there to be a mentor rather than waiting for someone, you know, to go around on the internet and look for that. You know, the world is a very big place. You don't have to just mentor locally, you can do that globally as well. And I say, and it is about trying to speak to people within your studio and wanting the best for everyone, because if you are then trying to work on your C# or go into C++, just being able to practice that together and have that sense of like incubation or a bit of research and development within your studio to think about what's coming next rather than just what you're developing now, will just keep strengthening your business strategy as well. And again, when you get stronger, other people will start seeing that, and you just have this total uplift across the board with everyone. I was saying, when you start doing that, you talk about it authentically about your own development, like we heard earlier as well, then other people will think, okay, maybe I can do that as well. So just talking about wanting to take yourself forward with the leaders in studios does help. And I've seen huge changes. I mean, I think even, you know, with India as well, with game development in India, with art and animation, thinking about the portfolios and the work that I was seeing in 2009 versus 2019, the leap in skills, knowledge and proficiency with particular pieces of software is just come on in leaps and bounds. And I feel really confident that actually we're going to see even a bigger, richer mix of diversity in our industry across the globe. I think we're all going to get there really quickly, because the curiosity and the resilience is there within people as a natural streak as a developer.
Makes a lot of sense. So Marcus, quick comment, because we're coming at the end and I have two last questions that are really important questions that I wanted to ask, hopefully all of you. So quick comment on so many genres, such a big industry, such a sort of like wide play. Where do you start?
Where do we start? Let's see. Okay, so I guess if you're listening to this, if you are a young talent, you are an aspiring person to join the gaming industry, I think knowing what you want to do, what you're passionate about, what makes you excited, and what makes you really wake up every morning and wanting to go to work and do stuff, knowing that is important. And because everyone is built differently, you know, in terms of strength, weaknesses, motivation. So before you do something, make sure you understand that, like, what is in with you, right? Like, and you have to admit that you have weaknesses that you have to work on and stuff like that. And of course, know how to make games is one part of the business. Know how to build business is a whole different story, right? So if you are looking to establish a studio, you have to, you know, also know how to put the team together. I would say, like Emma said, have a mentor, and also Mahum mentioned that as well. You know, make sure that you have someone who actually walks through the journey and kind of like, you know, provide some guidance to that. Brush up your leadership skill. You know, decide what kind of leader you want to be, what kind of company you want to build, or what kind of person you want to be. You know, what kind of companies you want to join, and so on and so forth. One really quick resource that I would like to share is Google actually shares a lot of best practices in terms of leadership, team management, HR practices, and so on. If you go Google for rework with Google, it's REWORK with google.com. I think that's a website where we kind of like update some of the things that might be useful to people who's trying to establish a studio.
Makes a lot of sense. I think not going with the flow and at least knowing what you're doing on daily basis is something super important to get somewhere. And destination is always kind of like a mystery. Where you end up is you never know. So Mom, specifically to you, because you work in this area and in interest of time as well, the gender balance in gamers is kind of like hitting an equilibrium, particularly when it comes to mobile games and everything, and mobile games in particular as well. How do we encourage going towards that balance in Pakistan and globally? What are a couple of key things that we need to work more on where we lack?
And this is a question I've often get asked, and I like to see game development as an advanced subset of software engineering. And the problem is with the engineering department in itself, with the gender balance and stuff. And what we have come to of the opinion, and it is my personal opinion also, that the bottleneck is not exactly in the companies and the hiring processes, but the bottleneck is sort of at the academics level. And the young girls get discouraged very easily in the even enrolling in the engineering department when they see that only, okay, out of the 60 other classmates, only 2 other are going to be girls, and it's not going to be a very collaborative environment. It's not going to be that fun. And even with and they have a lot of immense family pressure of their parents saying, okay, this might not be a very fun time for you. We want you to have a good, relaxed time. This is going to be a really difficult challenge. Don't do that. And I faced this also. I had weird interventions at grocery stores, at weddings and all that stuff. Their relatives came telling me, don't do engineering. You're going to waste your time. Don't do engineering. You're going to spend a lot of your life is going to end. A lot of people said that you will never get married if you get into engineering. You will never be able to find another guy. And I was like, there are a lot of other guys in engineering, so that might not be a very big problem in itself. So my personal opinion is we need to work at grassroots levels in schools and encourage young girls to enroll in engineering as young as maybe start encouraging them at the age of 10 or 11, and definitely at the age of 14, 15, when they're ready to about to start working towards their portfolio, towards going to a university, encouraging them towards a STEM. And the other thing, the companies that I would really love to see is that for companies to start encouraging a very gender equal environment, and even if their team is male dominant, have an environment that is supportive of another gender or of a different gender, and make a very inclusive, safe environment for them. And girls will definitely come. You will start seeing some increase in the numbers.
So it's very insightful to hear this perspective, and you've used a few organizations, places, locations, perspectives, and people, and that really relates to the last question I had, because talking about academia, and we have some people listening from academia as well. Pakistan, for instance, doesn't really have 4-year degree programs or undergrad programs when it comes to game design and development, essentially. There are some programs for art. They are not maybe up to the speed right now when it comes to games and everything, but that's a separate story. So coming back to these programs, and keeping in mind the world is now moving away from, at least in popular opinion, moving away from 4-year degree programs and saying, okay, you don't really need that. And Pakistan not having that. Can institutes here learn from what's happening globally and maybe skip a sort of like entire step or a few steps? And what do they do to kind of like contribute productively in learning of people through their programs? What kind of programs they should offer? And this is the last question. So after this, we'll kind of like cut to the next panel.
Yes, I'll try to keep the answer small. I've heard of the opinion, I've heard of the sentiment that maybe universities here should start having one-year programs or diplomas or something like that with game development. And I personally am of the opinion that we need to stop thinking about game development as something separate, considering we don't have that good infrastructure at the moment to support game development for four-year grads or undergrads or grad programs. Software engineering is basically game development, is a different game development is a subset of software engineering, and we hire people coming from CS and software engineering degrees. So it should be just continued as that, and we should think about having specializations added into your undergrad programs and your grad programs for game development rather than going for a one-year diploma, because I still feel like coming from a third world country, underdeveloped country, it is still very important to get a 16-year education. It will stop all the, because I know I come from the background, if you don't have that kind of 16-year education, the path is going to get much more difficult. So if you want to have a much more difficult path, go for it. I know people who dropped out of universities and still did wonderful, but it's just an added burden to yourself. So if you don't have that kind of added burden, if 16-year education is still a very good path to go, complete that. You will have a lot of support, and going to a university, is expanding your network and getting exposure. So I really encourage people to go, young people, to not sit in a room in their home and making games and uploading them to a Play Store and just developing their skills there. It is very important to go out, meet people, develop harness your leadership skills, your communication skills, your networking skills, because these soft skills are extremely important when it comes to working in companies and working with different people. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Yeah, and just to couple with that as well, you learn so much more than just the curriculum on a course. You learn how to work as a team, you learn to work to a deadline. For many students, as well as learning to live independently, which is a whole lot of problem solving by itself. So you learn a lot of valuable life skills by going through that dedicated learning process. You also learn a lot about yourself as an individual as well. Well, we have found that working with academics and educators that have worked the best is when they've been open to being flexible with how they deliver that content. So if they work with developers and work with particular studios and get them in as guest lecturers or teachers, or set the briefs for the students, then it engages everybody, and we start seeing the people come out of the course feeling like they're more ready to start work and ready to start being a good member of a studio, or just a good member of a team. So I think that there's a strong industry connection is important. But there are many different routes into the industry, but just having that self-awareness, being able to work as a great team member, being able to communicate and have the technical skills is what will help those students stand out. And when they leave those institutions with all of those, that will make that education institute stand out as well. And that's helping everyone.
So Marcus, your thoughts quickly.
I would, go back to the, how do we strive gender balance, in the game industry. I think it starts from creating allyship, or if not, being an ally ourselves. Having more allies, championing the gender balance for the game industry is really, really important. So the industry standard for gender ratio is roughly about 30%. I'm not talking like, like being a gamer. I'm talking about like the game development industry. It still requires a lot of improvement, of course. And that being said, in a lot of other places and markets, it's still way below the industry standard. And even us, when we run programs, we get asked by experts, why aren't Google doing our best to reach, industry standard or doing better? So we know that, right? So however difficult it is, everyone in the industry should make this a goal and make this a priority to reach better gender balance, especially in game development industry. And if you're in a leadership position, if you're running a company, if you're even running a small studios, whatever you do, be an ally. And that's kind of like the first step towards gender balance. And I have to say, GameX's effort in keeping this balance is really commendable. kudos to KNet's organizing team as well.
Thank you so much, Marcus, Emma, Mahum. It was very insightful talking to you guys, and I hope the audience also loved it as much as I did.